A home once vibrant and full of laughter now stands quiet. An unnerving silence has replaced the familiar sounds of family life. Families are uprooted, their worlds turned inside out in a heartbeat. Yet, within this familiar tale of displacement, there is a victim whose voice goes unheard. A loyal companion who cannot comprehend the reasons, who only knows how to wait, his hopeful eyes fixed on a door that may never open for his loved ones again. He is a silent sufferer in a very human drama. We welcome pets into our homes and they seamlessly weave themselves into the very fabric of our families. They cease to be just animals. They become confidants, sources of unwavering comfort, and providers of unconditional love. Now try to envision that profound bond, that deep connection suddenly and brutally severed. This is the stark reality for some. Before the abrupt turn of events, Benny's world was one of pure, unadulterated happiness. He was a cherished member of his family, residing in the bustling city of New York. His days were a joyful tapestry woven with playful antics, comforting cuddles, and the constant, reassuring presence of the humans he adored. He knew no fear, only the warmth of belonging and the joy of a shared life. One moment, his beloved family surrounded him, their voices and touch a constant comfort. The very next, they were inexplicably gone. His secure, predictable world, the only one he had ever known, crumbled into dust without warning. He was, after all, just a dog, a steadfast and loving friend, unwittingly ensnared in a deeply human drama far beyond his capacity to grasp. Can you begin to fathom the depth of his confusion, the ache of his longing? Benny's story is undeniably one of profound sadness, a narrative that tugs at the deepest empathetic strings within us. Every act of deportation sends ripples far beyond the individuals directly involved. It tears at the delicate fabric of a family unit. Homes that were once filled with dreams and daily routines are suddenly emptied, their inhabitants dispersed. Aspirations are abruptly deferred, sometimes indefinitely, and lives are altered in ways that can never be fully undone. The emotional toll of such separations is immense, a heavy burden that is often carried in silence, unseen and unacknowledged by the wider world. And in this wrenching process, what becomes of the pets, the loyal animals who shared these homes and lives? Families facing immense pressure and trauma are frequently forced into making unimaginable choices, compelled to leave behind a cherished member, a piece of their own heart. Benny's heartbreaking experience, while deeply personal and unique to him, is unfortunately not an isolated incident. His story serves as a poignant and powerful example of a much larger, often hidden tragedy that unfolds daily. There is a profound reason we choose to share Benny's journey, to bring his story from the shadows into the light. Benny's story is more than just a tale of one dog, it is a heartfelt call. Benny's life in New York City was a symphony of delightful experiences, a world painted in the vibrant hues of happiness. He was not just a resident, he was a cherished part of a loving family. The city, with its towering buildings and bustling streets, was his playground, his kingdom. Every morning walk was an adventure, filled with new scents to explore and friendly faces to greet. The cacophony of city sounds, from distant sirens to the laughter of children in the park, formed the unique soundtrack of his contented existence. His family was the sun around which his little bulldog world revolved. Their hands were always ready with a gentle pat, their voices soft with words of love. He was the recipient of countless belly rubs and ear scratches, each touch a reaffirmation of his place within their hearts. Benny was more than a pet. He was a furry, four-legged embodiment of love, a constant source of smiles and warmth in their busy city lives. This unwavering sense of safety allowed his playful and affectionate nature to blossom fully. Benny was far more than just an animal sharing a living space. He was the beating heart of his home. He possessed an uncanny ability to sense the emotional currents within the family, offering a comforting nudge or a gentle lick when spirits were low. His presence transformed their apartment into a true home, a sanctuary filled with an extra layer of warmth and unconditional love. He was a constant, a furry anchor in the sometimes turbulent waters of life, providing steadfast companionship without ever asking for anything in return but affection. His loyalty was a quiet promise, always kept. He was the official greeter, his happy barks and tail wags a joyful welcome to anyone crossing the threshold. He was the patient playmate for any visiting children, tolerating tugged ears with gentle forbearance. During family celebrations, Benny was always in the midst, perhaps sporting a tiny party hat, his presence adding to the festive cheer. The love that flowed between Benny and his family was a powerful reciprocal current. This bond was a testament to the profound connection possible between humans and animals, a pure and uncomplicated love story playing out daily. Benny's world was wonderfully simple, blissfully uncomplicated. He understood the language of kindness, the joy of play, the comfort of a warm lap, the complex machinery of human laws, the anxieties of uncertain futures, the concept of borders and belonging. These were alien constructs far beyond his canine comprehension. His concerns were immediate and tangible. A rumbling tummy, an exciting scent on the breeze, the anticipation of his family's return. He lived in a perpetual present, each moment embraced with the full enthusiasm of his loving bulldog heart. His family, undoubtedly aware of their own precarious situation, likely made every effort to maintain his bubble of happiness. They would have shielded him from hushed, anxious conversations, from the fear that might have flickered in their own eyes. For Benny, life continued its cheerful rhythm, each day a mirror of the last, filled with the reassuring constants of their love and care. Yet, even in the brightest sunshine, shadows can lengthen. The idyllic life Benny knew, so full of security and affection, was unknowingly fragile. It began like any other day in their bustling New York City home. Sunlight streamed through the windows, promising warmth and familiar routines. Benny, ever the optimist, likely greeted the morning with happy snorts and an expectant wag of his stubby tail. Breakfast was eaten, perhaps a short, cheerful walk was taken. There was no premonition, no dark cloud on the horizon to signal the impending storm. Life, in its beautiful, fragile ordinariness, proceeded as it always had. The laughter, the gentle words, the comforting presence of his humans, these were the constants of Benny's world. A world about to be irrevocably fractured. Suddenly, a sharp, insistent knock shattered the morning's peace. It was a sound that carried an unfamiliar weight, a harshness that did not belong in their home. Uniformed figures stood at the doorway, ICE agents. Their presence was an immediate intrusion, an omen of disruption. The air in the apartment shifted instantly, growing heavy with unspoken fear and sudden tension. Benny, attuned to his family's emotions, would have sensed the change immediately. His happy tale might have stilled, his ears perked with an anxious curiosity. The familiar comfort of his home felt suddenly threatened by these stern-faced strangers. For Benny's family, this was the moment they had perhaps dreaded, a nightmare made real. Their world tilted on its axis. Panic, cold and sharp, likely pierced through them. Urgent whispers might have filled the air, replacing the usual calm. Faces that Benny knew as kind and smiling were now etched with distress and disbelief. He would have watched them, his brown eyes wide, trying to understand the source of their sudden anguish. He might have nudged a familiar hand seeking reassurance only to find it trembling. The foundation of his secure world was beginning to crumble before his very eyes. The reality of their situation crashed down upon the family with brutal force. There were no negotiations, no pleas that could alter the course of events. The official directives were clear, their implications devastating. In that moment of profound shock and dawning horror, the family's thoughts would have been a maelstrom of fear for their future. And amidst this personal catastrophe, a new agonizing realization would have surfaced. What about Benny? Their beloved bulldog, their innocent companion, was caught in the crossfire of a battle he could not comprehend. His happy life was about to be torn apart. The arrival of the agents plunged the once peaceful apartment into a state of sudden, disorienting chaos. Hasty movements replaced the usual calm rhythm of their home. Voices, once gentle and loving, were now hushed, urgent, and strained with unshed tears. Drawers were opened and closed, belongings examined with an impersonal scrutiny that felt violating. Benny, amidst this turmoil, would have felt the rising tide of anxiety. He might have paced nervously, his low whimpers a testament to his confusion and distress. The familiar scents of his home were now overlaid with the metallic tang of fear and the strange, unsettling aroma of outsiders. Tears streamed down the faces of Benny's beloved humans. Their distress was a palpable thing, a heavy cloak of sorrow that enveloped the small apartment. They were being forced to confront an impossible choice, a tearing away from the life they had built. There was no time for reasoned discussion, no space for careful planning. The minutes ticked by with cruel efficiency, each one bringing them closer to an unbearable separation. The agent's presence was a constant reminder of their powerlessness. Benny, watching his family's raw grief, would have felt his own heart ache in sympathy, though the reasons remained a painful mystery to him. In the midst of this emotional wreckage, the agonizing truth about Benny became starkly clear. He could not go with them. The logistics of such a sudden, forced departure made it impossible. There were no provisions for pets, no compassionate clauses in the cold, hard regulations. To take him would be to subject him to an uncertain and potentially dangerous journey, one for which they could not prepare. The thought of leaving him behind was a fresh wave of anguish, another layer of heartbreak piled onto an already unbearable burden. Their beloved companion, their furry family member, was to be a casualty of their displacement. Benny, innocent and unknowing, would have witnessed this turmoil with growing bewilderment. He saw the tears, he heard the strained voices, he felt the oppressive weight of sadness in the room. He might have tried to offer comfort in his own bulldog way, a gentle lick, a comforting presence at their feet. But the comfort he usually brought seemed to be lost in the overwhelming tide of their despair. He could sense that something was terribly wrong, that his family was in pain. Yet the why of it all remained locked away, a human drama unfolding beyond his canine understanding. The final moments were a blur of hurried goodbyes and stifled sobs. Benny's family, their faces etched with a grief too profound for words, were being led away. Each step towards the door was a step towards an unknown future, a step further from the life they knew, the home they loved. They might have cast one last tearful glance back at Benny, their hearts shattering into a million pieces. The weight of what they were forced to do, leaving him behind, was an almost physical pain. This was not just leaving a pet, it was abandoning a piece of their soul. Benny, sensing the finality of their departure, likely tried to follow. His instinct would have been to stay with his pack, his beloved humans. He might have whined, a low mournful sound, or pawed at their legs, confused by their lack of response, their inability to take him. Perhaps a gentle but firm hand restrained him, or maybe in the chaos he was simply left standing, watching them go. The image of their retreating backs would be seared into his memory, a moment of profound and inexplicable abandonment. His world was unraveling, thread by painful thread, with every step they took away from him. Then came the sound that would echo in Benny's lonely hours, the click of the latch, the decisive thud of the door closing. It was a sound that sealed his fate, separating him from everything he held dear. The familiar voices faded down the hallway, the footsteps grew fainter, until all that remained was a deafening, alien silence. That closed door was more than just a physical barrier, it was a symbol of his loss, a stark demarcation between his happy past and his terrifyingly uncertain present. His family was gone, he was alone. The vibrant tapestry of his life had been suddenly, brutally torn. The immediate aftermath was a sensory shock. The apartment, once filled with the comforting sense of his family, now smelled faintly of strangers and lingering sorrow. The familiar sounds, their laughter, the television, the murmur of conversation, were replaced by an unnerving stillness. Benny stood alone in the sudden quiet, his loyal heart pounding in his chest. He was a creature of routine and companionship, and both had been violently stripped away. The world as he knew it had ceased to exist in the space of a few short traumatic hours. The warmth had vanished, leaving only a chilling emptiness. In the immediate aftermath of the door closing, Benny's first instinct was likely one of bewildered patience. He would have waited, his eyes fixed on the door, expecting it to reopen at any moment. His family always came back. He would have listened intently for the familiar jingle of keys, the sound of their footsteps returning. Perhaps he lay down by the door, a faithful sentinel, his body tense with anticipation. Every creak of the building, every distant noise might have sparked a flicker of hope, only to be extinguished by the continuing silence. He was confused, but the full weight of his abandonment had not yet settled. As minutes stretched into an agonizingly long hour, the character of the silence began to change. It was no longer a temporary quiet, but a profound and heavy emptiness. The apartment, his home, felt alien and cold without the presence of his humans. His favorite spots, the cozy rug by the sofa, the sunbeam by the window, offered no comfort. They were just empty spaces, reminders of what was missing. The toys they had played with together lay untouched, silent witnesses to his growing desolation. The very air seemed to throb with their absence, amplifying his solitude. Benny might have begun to pace, his soft bulldog snorts echoing in the stillness. He may have wandered from room to room, searching, his nose twitching, seeking a familiar scent, a sign that they were merely hiding. His water bowl was full, his food perhaps untouched. The physical comforts provided were now meaningless in the face of his emotional turmoil. His anxiety would have mounted with each passing moment, a rising tide of fear and confusion. This was not a game, this was not a brief departure, this was something terrifyingly different, something he had never experienced before. The full, crushing realization of his solitude began to dawn. His family was not coming back, not in the way they always had. The routine was broken, the bond was severed. He was alone, left behind in a world that suddenly felt vast and frightening. The security he had always known had evaporated, replaced by an unbearable sense of loss and bewilderment. Benny, the happy bulldog from the Big Apple, was now a symbol of heartbreak, his joyful life interrupted, his small, loyal heart aching with an unspoken grief. The silence of the empty apartment was the sound of his world shattering. The silence in the apartment grew heavier with each passing hour, then each passing day. It was no longer just an absence of sound. It became a palpable presence, a suffocating blanket smothering Benny's spirit. He waited, a loyal heart clinging to a fading hope. The door, once a portal to exciting walks and joyful reunions, now stood as a monument to his abandonment. His world had shrunk to these few rooms, each corner echoing with the memories of a happiness that felt lifetimes away. He did not understand. He only knew the profound ache of being left behind, a constant dull throb in his chest. His playful bulldog energy had seeped away, replaced by a weary listlessness. The toys, once sources of great delight, lay scattered and ignored, collecting dust like forgotten dreams. Food sat untouched in his bowl, his appetite lost to the gnawing anxiety and deep confusion that consumed him. He would occasionally rise, pad softly to the window and gaze out at a world that continued on, oblivious to his silent suffering. The vibrant life of New York City, once his playground, now seemed impossibly distant, a cruel reminder of the family he missed with every fiber of his being. His body grew heavy, his spirit heavier still. Sleep offered little respite, often punctuated by restless whimpers and twitching paws, perhaps chasing phantom figures in his dreams. Were they dreams of his family, of their laughter, of their gentle hands? He would awaken to the same crushing reality, the same empty rooms, the same profound loneliness. The happy memories, once a comfort, now carried a sharp pang of loss. He remembered the warmth of their cuddles, the reassuring tone of their voices, the sheer joy of their presence. Now those memories only highlighted the stark, cold emptiness of his current existence, a constant reminder of all he had lost. Benny could not comprehend the reasons for this sudden desolation. In his simple, loyal mind, he had done nothing to deserve this fate. Had he been a bad dog? Had he not loved them enough? These unanswerable questions likely swirled in his canine consciousness, adding to his bewilderment. He knew only loyalty and love, and his world had been built upon the foundation of their reciprocated affection. Now, that foundation had crumbled, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncertainty and sorrow. The waiting became an unbearable burden, each silent moment stretching into an eternity of grief. Days later, a key turned in the lock. Not the familiar sound of his family, but someone else. A family friend, perhaps alerted by a worried distant call, or driven by a nagging sense of unease, had come to check on the apartment. They stepped inside, expecting perhaps an empty space or some sign of an orderly departure. What greeted them instead was a scene of quiet despair, and at its center a bulldog whose spirit seemed utterly broken. The air was thick with sadness, a testament to Benny's lonely vigil. The friend's heart clenched at the immediate, palpable sense of sorrow. The friend found Benny huddled in a corner, a forlorn shape in the dim light. His usually bright eyes were dull, clouded with a profound weariness and confusion. He barely lifted his head at their entrance, his body language speaking volumes of his depleted state. The once vibrant, happy Bulldog was a mere shadow of his former self. The apartment itself bore witness to his solitude, the untouched food, the pervasive silence. It was clear he had been alone for some time, grappling with an emotional trauma no animal should endure. The sight was more than just sad, it was a punch to the gut. Benny's reaction to the newcomer was initially hesitant, a mixture of faint curiosity and deep-seated fear. He flinched slightly at the unfamiliar presence, perhaps expecting more pain, more confusion. But as the friend spoke softly, their voice gentle and reassuring, a tiny flicker of recognition, or perhaps just desperate hope, seemed to stir within him. He offered a weak, almost imperceptible thump of his tail, a poignant gesture from a creature starved of affection and reassurance. It was a silent plea, a fragile sign that a spark of his loving nature still remained, buried beneath layers of grief. The family friend was overcome with a wave of profound sadness and an immediate, fierce determination. Seeing Benny in such a state, so utterly dejected and alone, was heartbreaking. They knew with absolute certainty that this could not continue. Benny deserved love, care, and a chance to heal from this devastating experience. Leaving him here in this tomb of sorrow was not an option. In that moment, a resolve formed. They would find a way to help him. They had to. The first tentative thoughts of rescue, of finding a safe haven, began to take shape in their mind. The challenge was immense. How could one person find a new, loving home for a heartbroken Bulldog amid such tragic circumstances? The family friend knew they needed to reach a wider audience, to tap into a network of compassionate souls. In today's interconnected world, the most powerful tool at their disposal was social media. It was a long shot perhaps, but it was Benny's best hope. With a heavy heart, but a determined spirit, they decided to share Benny's story online, to cast his plight into the digital ether, praying it would find a sympathetic shore. Carefully, the friend began to craft the post. They selected a recent photo of Benny, one that captured his soulful eyes, his unspoken sadness. The image was heartbreaking, yet it held a quiet dignity. They wrote with honesty and emotion, detailing the sudden deportation of his family and Benny's subsequent abandonment. They described his gentle nature, his love for people, and his desperate need for a new beginning. The message was a plea, not just for a home, but for understanding and empathy for an innocent victim of circumstance. Every word was chosen to convey the urgency and the depth of Benny's plight. With a deep breath, the friend hit post. The message, carrying Benny's story and his image, launched into the vast, often chaotic world of social media. There was an immediate sense of vulnerability, of casting Benny's fate to the winds of online sentiment. Would anyone care? Would the post get lost in the endless scroll of updates and fleeting trends? The wait for a response felt agonizing. They refreshed the page, again and again, a knot of anxiety tightening in their stomach, hoping for a sign that their plea had been heard, somewhere out there in the digital expanse. Then, slowly at first, it began. A like, a sad react, a comment expressing sorrow and support, then a share, and another. The post started to ripple outwards, moving beyond their immediate circle of friends. Each notification was a small spark of hope, a tiny beacon in the overwhelming darkness of Benny's situation. People were touched by his story, by the injustice of his abandonment. The digital cry for help was being amplified, a chorus of concerned voices joining the solo plea. It was just the beginning, but it was a start. A fragile lifeline had been cast. Benny's story, launched into the digital expanse, began its unseen journey. It traveled through fiber optic cables, across screens, and into countless news feeds. It was a tiny beacon of sorrow in a vast ocean of information. Yet the image of his mournful eyes, the simple plea for help, possessed a quiet power. It cut through the usual online chatter, the fleeting trends, the endless stream of content. This was a real life, a real heartbreak seeking a lifeline. The internet, so often a place of distraction, became a conduit for connection, a potential pathway to salvation for one lonely Bulldog. Somewhere in this sprawling digital landscape was Kyle Aaron Reese. He was an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. Perhaps he was unwinding after a long day, scrolling idly through his phone, as so many of us do. He wasn't searching for a new responsibility, nor was he actively looking to adopt a pet. His evening was likely meant for relaxation, a quiet pause. But fate, in its mysterious and often serendipitous way, had a different plan in store for him that night. An algorithm, or perhaps something more profound, was about to place Benny's story directly in his path, and then it happened. Amidst the blur of images and updates, one post made Kyle pause. It was Benny. The photograph of the bulldog, his face a mask of profound sadness and confusion, seemed to stare directly at him. Kyle read the accompanying text, the story of a loving family torn apart, of a loyal pet left behind. It wasn't just another sad animal story that elicited a fleeting moment of sympathy. Something about Benny's plight, the sheer injustice of it, resonated deeply within him. It struck a chord that vibrated with an unexpected intensity, demanding his full attention. The image of Benny, alone and waiting, burrowed its way into Kyle's thoughts. He scrolled past, then scrolled back. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was something more, something he couldn't simply ignore and forget. The story lingered, a quiet insistence in the back of his mind. Benny's silent suffering, conveyed through a single photograph and a few heartfelt paragraphs, had transcended the digital screen. It had reached out and touched Kyle's heart in a way he hadn't anticipated. This was the beginning of an intervention, a compassionate response sparked by a shared digital plea. Kyle felt an immediate, powerful wave of empathy wash over him. The story of Benny's abandonment, his silent vigil in that empty apartment, was deeply affecting. He imagined the fear, the confusion, the utter desolation the poor bulldog must be experiencing. It was a raw, visceral reaction, a profound ache for this animal he had never met. This wasn't just abstract sorrow, it was a feeling of connection to Benny's suffering. The injustice of it all, an innocent creature caught in the harsh gears of human affairs, stirred a sense of indignation within him. He found himself thinking about Benny long after he had put his phone down. The image of those soulful, sad eyes was imprinted on his mind. He considered the implications. Taking on a dog, especially one who had endured such trauma, was a significant commitment. It meant time, patience, resources, and a deep well of emotional support. Could he provide that? Was he truly prepared for the responsibility? Practical questions mingled with the strong emotional pull. His mind weighed the pros and cons, but his heart was already leaning heavily in one direction. Despite any reservations, the urge to help Benny became overwhelming. The thought of this gentle creature continuing to suffer in silence, waiting for a family that would not return, was more than Kyle could bear. He realized he had the capacity to change Benny's fate, to offer him a safe and loving home, a chance to heal. The potential challenges seemed to diminish in the face of this compelling need to act. Compassion, pure and unwavering, won the internal debate. He decided he had to do something. He had to reach out. With newfound resolve, Kyle sought out the contact information from the social media post. He drafted a message, his words careful, but sincere. He expressed his profound sympathy for Benny's situation and his genuine interest in offering the bulldog a permanent loving home. Hitting send on that message was a decisive step, a commitment. It was a beacon of hope responding to Benny's silent call for help. A digital plea had found its human answer, and the first fragile threads of a new destiny for Benny were beginning to be woven. The journey from abandonment to rescue was taking a pivotal turn. The family friend who had posted Benny's story received Kyle's message with a surge of relief and cautious optimism. After so much worry, this was a tangible sign of hope. Arrangements were quickly made for Kyle to meet Benny. There was an air of anticipation, a sense that something truly important was about to happen. Kyle, too, felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He knew this meeting was significant. It held the potential to mend a broken heart, to rewrite a sorrowful story, and to change his own life in the process. He prepared himself, hoping he could be the safe harbor Benny so desperately needed. Kyle arrived at the location where Benny was being temporarily kept. The atmosphere was subdued, tinged with the lingering sadness of Benny's ordeal, and then he saw him. The bulldog was even more forlorn in person than in the photographs. His posture was slumped, his eyes held a deep weariness. He seemed small and vulnerable, a creature overwhelmed by grief. Seeing Benny in the flesh, witnessing his quiet despair firsthand, solidified Kyle's resolve. This was no longer just a story, this was a living being in desperate need of kindness and a second chance at happiness. Kyle approached Benny slowly, cautiously. He spoke in soft, gentle tones, his voice calm and reassuring. He didn't rush, he allowed Benny to set the pace. He extended a hand, palm open, a simple gesture of peace and friendship. Benny, initially wary, observed Kyle with a mixture of fear and hesitant curiosity. Years of trust had been shattered. His world had become unpredictable. He flinched almost imperceptibly at first, his body tense. Kyle remained patient, understanding the deep wounds that needed time and gentle care to heal. He simply sat, offering his quiet, non-threatening presence. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a small miracle occurred. Benny took a tentative step forward. He sniffed Kyle's outstretched hand. There was a slight, almost imperceptible lift of his ears. Perhaps it was the kindness in Kyle's eyes, or the gentle timbre of his voice. A fragile spark of connection was ignited. Benny let out a soft sigh, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of his sorrow, but also a hint of surrender. In that quiet moment, a silent understanding passed between them. It was the very first step on a long road to healing, the beginning of a new chapter for Benny, filled with hope. Benny's journey towards healing had begun, a fragile beacon of hope in a story steeped in sorrow. His rescue by Kyle Aaron Reese was a testament to human compassion, a single light piercing the darkness. Yet, as Benny took his first tentative steps towards a new life, it is crucial to remember that his experience, while deeply personal, is not unique. Countless other beloved pets find themselves in similarly heartbreaking situations. They become the silent, forgotten casualties when families are abruptly torn apart by deportation. Not every story finds its Kyle. Not every pet finds a lifeline cast so quickly and effectively. Many endure prolonged suffering, their fates hanging precariously in the balance. Imagine the terror these animals face. One moment, they are secure in a loving home surrounded by familiar faces, scents, and routines. The next, their world is violently upended. Their humans vanish, often without a word of explanation the animal can comprehend. Confusion reigns. Fear takes root. Left alone in empty houses or apartments, they wait, just as Benny did. Hunger and thirst can become pressing realities if immediate intervention doesn't occur. The once comforting sounds of home are replaced by an eerie silence, or worse, the unfamiliar noises of an empty dwelling, amplifying their distress and isolation. The psychological impact on these abandoned companions is profound and often long-lasting. They can develop severe separation anxiety, becoming fearful of being left alone even for short periods. Trust, once freely given, can be shattered, making it difficult for them to bond with new people. Depression is common, manifesting as lethargy, loss of appetite, and a general disinterest in activities they once enjoyed. These are not just fleeting emotions, they are deep psychological wounds. Even when rescued and placed in new loving environments, these animals carry the invisible scars of their traumatic experiences, requiring immense patience and understanding to heal. These innocent creatures are victims, pure and simple. They have committed no crime, broken no laws. Their only fault is their unwavering loyalty and love for families who are suddenly, forcibly removed. Their lives, once filled with joy and security, are thrown into chaos due to human decisions and policies far beyond their understanding. The cruelty of this situation, even if unintended by those enforcing the laws, is undeniable. It is a harsh reminder that the consequences of such actions ripple outwards, touching even the most vulnerable and voiceless members of a family unit, leaving deep unseen scars. When pets like Benny are left behind, overburdened animal shelters and dedicated rescue organizations often become their only hope, their last resort. These institutions, frequently operating on shoestring budgets and relying heavily on volunteers, are stretched to their limits. They are tasked with providing not just food and shelter, but also medical care and emotional support for animals arriving in states of profound distress. The influx of pets from deportation cases adds another layer of complexity and strain to their already demanding work. Each new arrival represents another mouth to feed, another kennel to clean, another broken heart to mend. Walk through the corridors of many shelters, and you will hear the echoes of stories like Benny's. Rows of kennels house animals looking out with a mixture of hope and despair. The environment, despite the best efforts of staff, can be inherently stressful, noisy, unfamiliar, and confining. For an animal already traumatized by the sudden loss of its family and home, the shelter can be an overwhelming place. Finding suitable adoptive homes for these pets is a significant challenge. Rescuers work tirelessly, but the sheer number of animals in need often outweighs the number of available loving families, leading to difficult choices. The pets affected by deportation often face specific hurdles in their journey to a new home. Some may be older animals considered less adoptable than puppies or kittens. Others might exhibit behavioral issues stemming directly from their trauma, fearfulness, anxiety, or defensive reactions, which require experienced and patient adopters. Sometimes specific breed needs, or pre-existing medical conditions that families were managing, can make placement more complicated. These are not problem pets. They are pets who have endured a problem, pets who desperately need a second chance to feel safe and loved again. Each face peering through the bars of a kennel represents a life interrupted, a unique personality longing for connection. Behind every pair of hopeful or mournful eyes is a story of loss, a silent echo of Benny's own heartbreaking journey. They are the furry refugees of human circumstance, waiting patiently for someone to see beyond their current confinement, to recognize their inherent worth. They dream of a gentle hand, a kind voice, and the warmth of a home where they can finally feel secure again. Their quiet pleas fill the spaces between the barks and meows, a chorus of need awaiting a compassionate response. Benny's rescue is a heartwarming chapter, a bright spot in a larger, more somber narrative. However, it is vital to understand that his story is not an endpoint, but rather a lens through which we can view a much broader, systemic issue. The plight of pets left behind during ICE deportations is a recurring tragedy, played out in countless homes across the nation. It is an often overlooked consequence of immigration policies that prioritize enforcement over the complex realities of family life, which for many, unequivocally includes their animal companions. This is not about isolated incidents. It is about a pattern of heartbreak. Families facing deportation are thrust into situations of immense stress and uncertainty. The process is often swift, leaving little to no time for thoughtful planning, especially concerning their pets. They may lack the resources, the contacts, or simply the opportunity to arrange for their animal's safe passage or alternative care. The choice to leave a pet behind is rarely made lightly. It is usually a decision born of desperation, a heartbreaking consequence of having no other viable options in a moment of crisis. Their anguish is compounded by the knowledge of the loyal friend they are forced to abandon. In modern society, for a vast number of people, pets are not mere property. They are integral members of the family. They provide companionship, emotional support, and unconditional love. They share our joys and comfort us in our sorrows. Yet this deep emotional bond is frequently disregarded within legal and administrative frameworks surrounding deportation. The emotional devastation experienced by families being separated from their pets adds another layer of trauma to an already harrowing experience. The loss of a pet in such circumstances is not trivial. It is the loss of a family member, a source of stability and love. Benny's journey from a cherished family member to a lonely, abandoned soul, and then, thankfully, to a rescued companion, illuminates a critical issue. It forces us to confront the unintended yet deeply painful consequences of policies that fail to account for the entirety of a family unit. Recognizing that pets are profoundly affected by these events is the first essential step. Benny's story serves as a powerful call to awareness, urging us to consider more compassionate approaches, and to support the organizations working tirelessly to give these forgotten victims a voice and a second chance at happiness. His tale asks us to look beyond one bulldog and see the many others waiting. Benny's world, once shattered by sudden loss and profound confusion, had begun to mend. The darkness of his lonely vigil was slowly, surely being pierced by rays of unwavering hope. Kyle Aaron Reese had opened not just his home, but his heart, offering Benny a sanctuary. This was more than a simple rescue. It was a profound act of reclamation. The little bulldog, who had known such deep despair, was now on a path toward rediscovering the simple joys of life. Gone were the endless silent hours of waiting by a door that brought only sorrow. Now each day offered the promise of kindness, the comfort of companionship, and the gentle reassurance of belonging once more. His tail, once still, now wagged with a tentative yet growing happiness. The journey of healing is rarely swift, and for Benny, it was a path paved with patience and understanding. The shadows of his past trauma sometimes flickered. A sudden noise might make him flinch. An unfamiliar face might spark a moment of hesitation, yet Kyle's steadfast love acted as a constant balm. He provided a stable routine, gentle encouragement, and an abundance of affection. Slowly, Benny began to trust again, to believe in the goodness of humans. He started to engage in playful antics, his bulldog spirit re-emerging. The simple act of chasing a ball or enjoying a leisurely walk became milestones in his emotional recovery, each one a testament to his resilience. This second chance was a lifeline, a restoration of faith for a creature who had been so cruelly let down. It was a testament to the incredible power of one individual's compassion to alter a life's trajectory. Benny had been lost in a sea of despair, an innocent victim of circumstances far beyond his control. Kyle's intervention was a beacon, guiding him back to shore. It showed that even in the face of systemic issues, individual acts of kindness can create ripples of profound change. Benny's story, transformed by Kyle's empathy, became a powerful reminder that every life has value, every suffering heart deserves solace and a chance to heal. Now Benny's happiness serves as a potent inspiration, a living symbol of hope. His remarkable resilience, his capacity to love again despite the deep wounds he carried, speaks volumes. He is no longer just a statistic, another sad story of abandonment. He is a vibrant, loving companion whose journey from heartbreak to healing touches everyone who hears it. His soft snores in a warm bed, his happy greetings at the door, his contented sighs. These are the sounds of a life reclaimed. Benny's bright horizon reminds us that even after the darkest storms, the sun can, and often does, shine again, especially when met with unwavering compassion. Benny's new beginning is a joyous victory, a heartwarming resolution to his personal tragedy. We celebrate his safety, his newfound happiness with Kyle. However, his story also casts a necessary light on a much larger, ongoing issue. Countless other animals, beloved companions just like Benny, do not find such swift and fortunate resolutions. They remain caught in the devastating aftermath of family separation due to deportation, their silent suffering often unheard, their desperate needs unmet. The problem persists, a quiet crisis unfolding in the shadows, demanding our attention and our action. We must remember that for every Benny, there are many others still waiting, still hoping. This is where our collective responsibility begins. We can all play a part in changing the narrative for these forgotten pets. Dedicated animal rescue organizations and shelters are on the front lines, working tirelessly to provide care and find new homes for animals in distress. They need our unwavering support. This support can take many forms. Financial donations to help cover food, medical care, and operational costs. Volunteering time to assist with animal care or administrative tasks. Offering to foster an animal, providing a temporary safe haven and helping them transition, or, when possible, choosing to adopt a rescued pet, offering them a permanent, loving home. Their work is crucial, often the only lifeline these animals have. Beyond direct support for rescue efforts, we must also raise our voices in advocacy. It is vital to increase awareness about the plight of pets affected by deportation. Sharing stories like Benny's can help educate the public and foster greater empathy. We can encourage discussions about more humane policies, urging lawmakers and authorities to consider the welfare of animal family members during such enforcement actions. Perhaps protocols can be developed to allow families more time to arrange for their pets' care, or to facilitate reunification where possible. Our voices, united, can push for systemic changes that acknowledge the deep bonds between people and their pets. The power of individual compassion cannot be overstated. Every small act of kindness contributes to a larger wave of positive change. It might be sharing a social media post about an animal in need, like the one that saved Benny. It could be educating a friend or neighbor about the issue. It might involve being more observant in our own communities, ready to step in if we see an animal suffering due to abandonment. Benny's story teaches us that one person, moved by empathy, can make an extraordinary difference. We must all strive to be that person, to listen for those echoes of empathy and respond with a compassionate heart. Benny's journey, from the bustling streets of New York to the depths of despair, and finally to the warmth of a loving home, leaves an indelible mark on our hearts. His story teaches us profound lessons. It vividly illustrates the depth of emotion animals experience, their capacity for love, loyalty, grief, and joy. It forces us to confront the far-reaching, often unseen consequences of human actions and policies. Most importantly, it shines a brilliant light on the transformative power of empathy and the profound impact of compassionate intervention. Benny's tale is more than just a story. It is a mirror reflecting our shared humanity. The compassion we feel for Benny should extend to all beings caught in the crosshairs of complex human crises. While his story focuses on a beloved bulldog, it speaks to a universal need for kindness and consideration for the vulnerable. When families are fractured, when lives are upended, we must remember those who have no voice to articulate their suffering. The children, the elderly, and yes, the animal companions who are an integral part of so many lives. Remembering the voiceless is a fundamental tenet of a truly humane society, a responsibility we all share to look out for those who cannot fend for themselves. Stories like Benny's are vital. They do more than just evoke emotion, they have the power to fuel meaningful change. They can inspire us to look beyond our own immediate concerns and consider the welfare of others. They can encourage us to advocate for kinder, more thoughtful approaches to difficult societal issues. Benny's journey, amplified by those who cared, sparked a chain reaction of compassion. It is our hope that his legacy will be one of increased awareness, leading to more support for rescue efforts and a greater societal commitment to protecting the innocent victims of circumstance, regardless of species. As we conclude Benny's story, let us hold on to the image of him, safe, cherished, and finally at peace. Let his enduring paw print remind us not only of the heartbreak he endured, but also of the incredible resilience of the animal spirit and the profound beauty of a second chance. His happiness is a testament to what is possible when empathy meets action. May his tale inspire us all to listen more closely, to care more deeply, and to act more decisively to ensure that more stories of displacement and loss can find their own hopeful, loving conclusions. The work continues, but with Benny's spirit as our guide, we can strive to make the world a little kinder, one compassionate act at a time.